much better. Brenda, not so much yet, but hopefully this week she'll turn the corner. Getting over COVID. Yay. And I told Ashley, I said, if I'm going to be locked in that room for 10 days, I need some chocolate. So she got me some chocolate. So we are in Genesis chapter 1, and I've been reading to the reading and listening to the Old Testament. Listening is quite an amazing exercise, so I've learned a lot by listening, and I look forward to sharing that with you over time. This morning, we're going to move past the first verse or two and into the next part of the creation story. I've already spoken about Jesus being present, and so now I want to connect this repetition that the poet gives us in the first chapter. And God said, and it was good. And God said, and it was good. And God said, and it was good. And so he creates light, waters, land, plants, animals, stars, moon, all of these things, and they're all good. And that's the important thing for us to begin with. This is a story of purpose and of the nature of the Maker. The whole Bible is the story about God's nature. And there are a couple of things that are repeated very, 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 very often throughout the scriptures. The first is that what God does is purposeful and it is good. And the second is that God is holy and we should seek that and be in awe of it and honor it all of our days. And we tend to forget those things. And so since this is a story of purpose, it's not really intended to be a story of chronology. That's our tool of measurement that God gives us to see if we're living according to purpose. And so over the centuries, there's this great debate about how long is a day. Well, I don't think it matters. I don't think that's the point. The point is that God made it, and it is good. Why aren't there any dinosaurs? Well, it's not a story about dinosaurs. It's a story about God's purpose and his desire to be in a relationship with the pinnacle of his creation, who happens to be you and me. We are the only ones made in the image of God, and that's kind of the highlight of what I wanted to talk about today. We are unlike any other creature or any other thing that God made. We are the pinnacle of creation. And sometimes we forget that even angels were created, and we are above them. We are at the height of all the things that God made, even above the angels. And that is quite astounding. And so in this story, God creates, and then there seems to be a bit of a pause, and then at the end of the sixth day there's a greater pause, and we're going to talk about that next week, the great pause. But I want to talk about the creation of the pinnacle of creation, that is us. We are the ones that begin to pull things together. And so I wanted to read to you from the first chapter, the creation story of humans. And then we'll look eventually at the second chapter, the next creation story of humans, that kind of identifies a little bit more. He says, "Let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish of the sea and the birds in the sky, over the livestock and all the wild animals, and over all the creatures that move along the ground." So God created mankind in his image. In the image of God, he created them, male and female. He created them. God blessed them, said to them, "Be fruitful, increase in number, fill the earth, and subdue it. Rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, over every living creature that moves on the ground. God said, I give you every seed-bearing plant on the face of the whole earth, and every tree that has fruit with seed in it. They will be yours for food. All the beasts of the earth, all the birds in the sky, the creatures that move along the ground, everything that has breath of life in it, I give every green plant for food. And it was so. God saw all that he had made, and it was very good. And there was evening, there was morning, the sixth day. And so on. He waits until the end, of course, until all that is beautiful and good and right and holy is made. And then he places us in the midst of all the good things that he made. And it is very humbling to understand that God entrusted us with this tremendous privilege of entering into the beauty of his creation and actually ruling over it. That is humbling. And the purpose in this is for you and for me not only to appreciate the world that God made, which we should do at all times, but also to be in charge, kind of watching over things. One of the translations says that we have dominion over the earth, which means we are like stewards taking care of the world and everything in it. And when we take things for granted or toss things aside or carelessly choose not to see, then we dishonor our purpose. And that breaks covenant with God and makes our souls uneasy. And so the answer, of course, the answer is to get back to why we were made. I learned this a long time ago in my life. When I am diseased in my soul, my answer has always been to get back to my original purpose, and that is to be in awe of my responsibility to care for the world and everyone in it and everything in it. And sometimes that takes the form of going far away into God's world, to a beautiful place that challenges my earthly senses and my physical nature and even my spiritual nature, my will, to get to a place where I am humbled again. I remember there's so many memories of the many trips that I've taken into Quetico Park in Canada, and one of them was I was cleaning a smallmouth bass, and there were two eagles watching me from the top of a pine tree. And I noticed that when I threw the first carcass in the water from what I had cleaned, the eagles were, one of them came down on top of the water, and it was only about 10 feet away from me. So the second one, the eagle was watching me still, and I cleaned it, and I just held it up like this. And he swooped down and took that thing right out of my hand. And I probably will never forget the sense that I had of contributing and being responsible, taking from the earth only what you need, and even that which you could not use, relinquishing it to those who could. It was a humbling experience and very purposeful for me, and has stuck with me all my days. And the mistake that we make sometimes is we get so caught up in our chronologies that we forget our purpose. And I would just want to encourage you today. I know it's hot here in Florida, but it'll cool down. Be intentional about appreciating the world that God gave you. Most of us, we go to work, and the whole purpose of work as we have it today is some of us are in service, but most of us were in some kind of sales. And we need to convince people that they need whatever it is that we're selling. And I get that. That's the world we live in. We got to make money, right? To pay for our house, to pay for our car, to pay for our stuff. But in the end, we are to have stewardship over one another and stewardship over the planet. And if we are out of sync with that purpose, the answer is to deliberately get back into purpose. Find a way to be a steward, either of the planet or of other people. When we practice our dominion, it should be over the things we're created to rule over, and not over one another. But we get caught. We get trapped into that. And so I would say today, maybe this week sometime, try to deliberately have an exercise of humility. Put other people ahead of yourself. Subdue yourself. Be in awe of the world that God's made, and humble yourself to the fact that He chose us to carry His image, the likeness of Him into the world, and to care for all that is very good. And that is tremendously humbling, and something for which we should always be appreciative. And as I listen to the Old Testament, it sure doesn't sound like many of them appreciated it very much, very long. A bunch of crazy lunatics. But it's a true story, and that's the point. We're not really all that different. We get trapped in our own chronologies and forget our purpose. So be deliberate this week. Remember why you're here. Remember who made you, and remember all that He made that was so very good. You guys have a great week, and I hope and I pray